Hello again, my fifth primary students, my fascinating fifth primary students. Welcome back to our newest video of the story branch, and we will tackle chapter 3 through this video. So, the first thing we're going to learn revision for the most important events of the previous chapter, some preview questions to remember what you've prepared, the main events that happened in the chapter, the most important quotations, the chapter in points, and the character sketch. The first revision question says, what did the children's mother do to earn money, and what does it show about her? If you remember, and I'm sure you do, the children's mother had started writing stories in order to earn money for her living and for the children's needs. And that shows that she was a dedicated character, and she was devoted to the children and their needs, and she wanted to get them whatever they needed. The second question says, what solution did Peter think about for their coal problems? If you remember, and again I'm sure you do, Peter invented a game called Coal Mines, where he took an old pram from the garden and filled it with coal twice and went home with it. But for the third time, he was caught by the station master. And that leads us to the third question, which says, what happened when the station master caught them? And we learned that the station master let them go home with a warning because he felt sorry for them because they were poor and needed the coal to get warmer. So he let them go and warned them not to steal the coal ever again. So let's move on and read the preview questions. And for that part, you have to stop and read carefully and listen to the chapter before starting. If you have done that, let's read together. What do you think the children did to each train? Why do you think the children's mother wrote stories? What do you think Peter will start to collect? I'm sure you know the answers for all the questions. And let's start with chapter 3, which is called The Green Dragon. In this chapter, we see the attraction for the railway and how it grows with the children. Each day that passes, their attraction to the railway and their interest in trains grow. So, as this happened, they started waving to the trains and giving them names. One of the names was the Green Dragon. On that train, there was an old gentleman, and this old gentleman is going to be a very important character with us this chapter. And that old gentleman became friends with the children when he waved to them and they waved back at him. They waved at each other every morning when the train passed. The children remembered their father whenever they saw the train and the old gentleman because they thought the train was going to London where their father was, and they missed him. They wanted to know everything about their father, and they waved to that train hoping it would get their feelings to their father. So the children's mother was still writing stories in her room all day, but in here we learn a new piece of information that mother sold her stories to an editor, and whenever she sold a story, she would give the children some extra money to get buns for tea. One day, Peter was running to get the buns for tea when he met the station master. The man was surprised that Peter got the money to buy buns for tea, so he asked him where he got the money. Peter told the station master that he got the money because their mother was writing stories in order to earn her living. The station master told Peter that he should be proud of his mother and how clever and devoted she was. Peter agreed, and he asked the station master whether he was still mad at them after the coal incident or not. The station master told him that the past was in the past and that he wasn't even mad anymore, and he invited the children to go to the station whenever they wanted. Peter was very happy and he ran home to tell his sisters the good news that the station master forgave them and they were invited to come or to go to the station anytime they wanted. Peter Peter started to collect engine numbers, and it was his new hobby. He had a notebook. He collected engine numbers and wrote information about trains. And as he was telling his mom about this hobby, one day she felt a little sick. So she told the children that she needed to rest. But when she rested, she didn't get any better. She only got worse. So Mrs. Viney, the woman that helps her around the house, called the doctor. When the doctor came, he told the children that they had to get a list of special foods and medicine in order for their mother to get better, and that she wouldn't get better unless she got these things. Their mother saw the list and she knew immediately that she couldn't afford it. So she told the children that she would be better just with just resting. The children refused. They insisted on getting their mother whatever she needed to get better. So they had to come up with a plan. Do you know what their plan was? Amazing, excellent. I'm sure you do. And their plan was to write a letter for the old gentleman on the train. On a sign, they wrote, "Look out at the station," and they raised that sign instead of waving at the old gentleman. When the old gentleman saw the sign, he waited at the station and he took the letter from Phyllis. That letter had whatever the children needed, the list that their mother needed to get better, and a letter from Roberta, Peter, and Phyllis. They said that they needed these things for their mother to get better. They asked the old gentleman to buy it for them, and they told him and promised that they would pay him back whenever their father came home, or whenever Peter got older. The old gentleman read that letter and smiled. He felt sorry for the children and he was sympathetic. So that night he sent a package with the porter and gave the children everything they needed for their mother to get better. Along with the package, there was a letter from the old gentleman telling them that they should be proud to be able to help their mother, and that they shouldn't listen to her if she said that they were wrong and they didn't do the good thing. So, and that would be the end of our chapter, and let's move on to the most important quotes. In page 17, lines number 11, 12, and 13, they show us how the children always thought about their father. Although they moved on with their lives, they never lost hope or forgot about their father. They always had him in the back of their minds, and they always wanted to talk to him and see him. In page 18, we have lines number 3 and 4, and we also have lines number 17 and 18. And this is a clear example of how Mother was a very generous mom to the children and tried her hardest to give them happiness. She knew the importance of family gatherings and did her best, or the best she could, to maintain good relationships with the children. Still in page 18, line 6, and from line number 6 until line number 13, and this conversation between between Peter and the station master shows how reasonable, forgiving, kind, and thoughtful the man is. He could have been angry at Peter, but he chose to be kind and forget the situation. We're still in page 18, lines number 19, 20, and 21. And this shows us how proud the children are of their hard-working mother, and this is one of the situations that show how loyal the children are to their family. In page 20, we have from line number 2, and this is a bit long, until line number until line number 13. And this shows how guilty the children felt after the coal incident. However, they were still interested in the railway and learning all about it. Page 21, we have lines number 11 and 12. One of Mother's many sacrifices to save money. She was willing to ignore her illness just to save money for the children and their needs. And this shows how committed and unwavering she was. An unwavering person is a person that is determined. Determined to do something means that you have your goal inside your head and you can do it, or you will do whatever you can in order to achieve it. So she was unwavering in getting the children everything they needed, even if she would sacrifice her own health and well being. Still on page 21, starting from line number 13 until line number 21. And here the children are seen as the trustworthy, reliable, and independent characters they were. They insisted on finding a way to help their sick mother, and they cared so much about her, so they found a way to get her the special things she needed to get better. Page 22 highlights the whole letter, starting from line number 1 till line number 9, and the letter they wrote shows how polite and trustworthy they were. They promised to pay the old gentleman back whenever they could. They didn't just ignore the fact that they owed the man money. They promised to help him to pay him back whenever they had the money. In pages 22 and 23, we have the last 3 lines and the first 5 lines, and we're introduced to a new character, the old gentleman. Like I said, he was very important in this chapter. He was nice enough to help the children who were in desperate need. He was charitable, kind hearted, and sympathetic towards the children. The last 3 lines in page 23. The children were proud of themselves because they were reliable enough to provide whatever their mother needed to get well. And here I have a question for you. Could you do the same if you were in their shoes? If you had the same situation at home where your mother was sick and your father was absent, would you do the same? Would you ask a stranger for help? I'd really very much like to know your answer to that question, but let's move on. The summary of the chapters. The children were afraid to go anywhere near the railway station because of the coal accident or incident, but they kept watching the train from a distance. They even gave names to the trains, and like the one they called the Green Dragon. They regularly saw an old gentleman on the Green Dragon, and they always waved at him and he always waved back. He reminded them of their father, who they thought was in London. Whenever their mother told a story, they would get money to buy buns for tea. Peter, who was running to buy the buns one day, met the station master again, who was forgiving and invited the children to the railway station again. Peter got interested in collecting engine numbers and writing notes about the trains. As he was telling his mother about that, she felt sick and needed to rest. She only got worse and worse, so Mrs. Viney called a doctor. The doctor ordered Mother to rest and asked the children to buy some special foods and medicine for her. Mother refused to buy the things she needed because she couldn't afford them. And as a result, the children thought of a clever plan and asked the old gentleman from the train for his help. The man, who was charitable enough to help, sent the package needed with the porter. That package had what the children's mother needed to get better, and the children were proud to be able to help their mother get better. Let's see the chapter in points. Getting back to the railway, which the children felt deeply attached to, we learn that the station master had forgiven them and invited them to be back whenever they wanted. Mother was sick and refused to buy the things she needed to get better because she couldn't afford it. This showed us how devoted and committed to the children's needs she was. The children thought of a clever plan and asked the old gentleman from the train for his help. It showed us how reliable they were and how independent they had become. The old gentleman was charitable, kind, and sympathetic, so he sent the children what they needed. And that would be the end of our video. Thank you for listening and goodbye.